We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Welcome back to Liberty Nation Radio, and we are with our special Talking Liberty segment, joined by Mr. Scott DeCosenza to discuss all things legal, liberty, and lunacy. Welcome back, Scott.
Hi, Mark. Thank you.
So, Scott, let's dive straight into this. Pennsylvania lawmakers are introducing a duty to assist bystander bill. Now, this came on the heels of something tragic and horrifying. I guess most of our listeners might be familiar with it was the finale to Seinfeld. Could you give us a little more information on this one, please?
Well, yeah, I think you'll fill in the Seinfeld details. I'll fill in the recent news events, which were that a woman was sexually assaulted on over the course of a commuter train ride in Philadelphia. It is a horrific story, one of the most horrific criminal justice stories, I think, in recent memory. And the officials, upon the initial kind of press releases that they came out with, both the police chief for the SEPTA, which is the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, the train authority, and also the police chief for the town where the train terminal was, where they actually made the arrest, blamed the bystanders for not doing more to come to the woman's aid by calling police. And they alleged that these people recorded the assault and did nothing basically to help. Mark, sad to say, just to pour vinegar on the wound of this attack itself, was that the authorities, the ones that are charged with keeping us safe, then of course they blamed other innocents, and it turns out that it wasn't even true. It was a lie. They libeled the public in order to take the blame off of themselves, and this is a furtherance an outgrowth from that lie. It's State Senator Jim Brewster's bill, and they call it a duty to assist bill, but that's really been mislabeled, because what it is it's a duty to report bill. And what it says is that under certain conditions, including what would have taken place on this train, or what did take place on this train, a person has a duty to report that, an affirmative duty in the law. And if they don't report it, then they themselves are guilty of a criminal act. And it's a shocking display of power when you can have a not a guilty mind and not a guilty act, but yet still be willing to throw your neighbor in a cage because you didn't like their response to being the close witness to a violent sexual assault. I think it's really beyond the pale, as you can imagine from my diatribe there, Mark.
Yeah, I think the issue here is most people listening would assume that, well, of course, if you saw something like that happening, you would either intercede or report anyway. But I guess the rub of this is that there are certain things that are considered crimes that most people don't want to really be involved with. For example, if they see an argument between a couple, couples have arguments, and now they under this bill would be legally obliged to report this, or they could face criminal charges, even if it were just an argument between Mark, a man and a wife.
You can imagine, well, what if you didn't know if it was a couple? What if you didn't know if it was a parent disciplining a child and not something worse? You out of an abundance of caution, you'd have to be on the phone of the authorities with regularity to keep yourself in good standing, that you weren't then liable for a crime. And, the other thing is, we know how horrible the criminal justice system is to the people who are the convicts. Now, I'm talking about what happens behind prison walls, Mark, and to suggest that we should take an innocent person who literally did nothing wrong except not respond in the preferred way to being this witness, and then subject them to the treatment of deprivation of liberty and being in a cage, it takes my breath away. It absolutely takes my breath away that people should think that that's an acceptable response for, again, the SEPTA police could maintain law and order on their trains. It's not like there's 1,000 trains a day and there's 10 officers. Those people with their generous salaries and defined benefit pensions are sitting back in their offices and not on the trains protecting people. And then when somebody is assaulted in the worst possible way, they take it and blame the few folks who have such fewer resources that they have to subject themselves to being on that train. It's just a pitiful endeavor all in.
Yeah, for lawmakers to be introducing bills on something that was, as it turns out, a falsehood anyway. It really shows that there appears to be a war against normal people, and the judiciary is the weapon being wielded. Now,
I haven't
another
heard
case.
that before, and I like it very much. A war against normal people.
Well, you're welcome to use it anytime you like. It's a Mark Angelides original. Now, moving on to this, there's another story I want to talk about, Scott. So a poll came out recently, Scott, that showed a little over a third of white applicants surveyed admitted to faking a racial component to their makeup in order to benefit from either a college admission or benefits accrued with that college admission for basically not being 100% white. Could you give us a couple of details on that, please?
Yes, white is the disfavored race in college applications, and everybody knows it. And so it's actually such a benefit that's where people are willing to falsify their application by lying about it. A full third, Mark, of these surveys. Intelligent.com is the name of the site that commissioned the survey. Seems like these are good numbers, and it suggests that just this is so widespread. It's hard to get. I mean, is there more than a third of participation in just about anything? I mean, you think about how many, what percentage of the applicant pool that is who recognize that it's not a fair deal, that they're being discriminated against on the basis of their race, which is illegal in every regard except for against whites. That's the only race-based discrimination that's permissible legally in the United States.
Let's delve into this a little bit, Scott, on the legal side. Was what the students admitted to, although I presume they admitted to it through anonymity,
right?
Is it illegal?
Well, it is probably illegal to sign a form at the bottom of which you say, I attest that all the foregoing answers is true and complete to the best of my knowledge and ability, which I'm guessing a lot of these applications say. And then if they say race or ethnicity and you make it up, then that's a bad application, right? You've committed fraud because you've signed your name to attest to the honesty of this thing. Now, maybe they're automated, maybe they're not signed anymore. I don't know. Who knows with the way colleges work today, but you could see how easy it would be to actually make it something that, but here's the thing, Mark, it's easily falsifiable. So before we get to that point though, I just want to say this. The thing that you have to remember too is how much power it has. That's why the people are motivated to lie. It's like better than a full grade point average. I said in the written piece I submitted to libertynation.com about this. Can you imagine? And so I don't even know if you know this, but SAT scores are it's the standardized test for college applicants in the United States, Mark. Just about all kids take it. And can you imagine if it was self-reported? Right, like the SAT board sends your SAT scores to the colleges that you apply to.
I got a 4.5.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Sure. I get perfect SATs. Oh, really? Well, no, not really. But if you're asking me, I'll just say that. So anyway, that's the way it is with these racial classifications. It's not like somebody's at the door saying, "Well, gee, you don't look like, you're an African American. You look like a Caucasian." They just say, "Okay."
So we've got to have a system that's creating incentives that make it beneficial to lie on college applications, because it's one of these things that, short of DNA testing people a la Elizabeth Warren, there's no real way to test it. So you're creating
not only that, you've got
a
these
series of incentives for dishonesty.
It sounds like a Hitler convention on racial classification when you really want to get into the bones of this thing and draw the lines. And that's where these things have to go, to the eugenicists' paradise of let's slice and dice everybody by their immutable characteristics.
Alternatively, colleges and universities could grant entrance based on merit.
Mark, don't be absurd, please. Come on.
Not in this day and age.
Yeah.
Scott D. Cosenza, welcome to the non-meritorious world. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Mark.
And that's about it for this episode of Liberty Nation Radio. I want to thank our guests, Tim Donner, Ange Moran, Lisa K. Donner, and Scott Cosenza. But most of all, you, the faithful listener. Thanks for being part of Team Liberty. One more thought before we conclude. Author Jared Kintz wrote, quote, "At first sign of crisis, the ignorant don't panic because they don't know what's going on. And then later, they panic precisely because they don't know what's going on." End quote. You and I, We all see these Biden-inspired crises coming down the road, but not the government. They didn't know how to react, and eventually they failed to act at all. Crisis after wave upon wave of crisis. Don't look to the administration to save you. They can't. They either don't know how or they don't want to. It's liberty and individualism that will weather this particular storm. Until next time, thanks for listening. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.